Hey everyone, and thank you so much for clicking on this video. My name is Justin, and I wanted to hop on and talk about the start of the Toronto Maple Leafs season so far this year. They are 3-2, 5 games in, a big improvement over the last few seasons where the Leafs have gotten off to some slow starts, but this year seemed to be going well. Couple wins, couple losses, and then a big comeback overtime winner in Tampa Bay last game. So lots of storylines early on here, and wanted to talk about just a few of them. The first thing I want to talk about is team toughness, because I did bring it up in just a recent video of mine talking about the concerns I have for this year's team. The team has gone out and acquired tougher players with piss and vinegar, as Brad Treliving said, a little bit of snot to them. And this isn't the first time, because in the past we've gone out and acquired Wayne Simmons, we've gotten Kyle Clifford. At last year's trade deadline alone, we got Noel Acciari, Ryan O'Reilly, Luke Shen. And this year, of course, the conversation coming into the season was that this team is going to be tougher because of the acquisitions of Tyler Bertuzzi, Max Domi, of course, Ryan Reeves, John Klingberg, just, again, making this team play a little bit of a different style. And what the general hope is here is that it's not just those players that are going to play with that grit and energy, but that it's going to bleed into the rest of the roster and this entire team will have a new identity. But my concern is that Sheldon Keefe has coached this team to not engage in that kind of behavior. And my fear is that I was right and that we're going down the same path here. And I know we started the season by seeing a little bit of it, some hints of it, especially from Ryan Reeves. Back-to-back games to start the season in Toronto where he's got his theatrics pointing at his bicep. He's laying some big hits and had back-to-back fights, but that's not what I'm necessarily looking for. Yes, that's his role. It's great that he's playing it, but team toughness to me isn't just being in fights. It's not just laying guys out with massive hits. It's making sure you're finishing your checks, being on the forecheck, and just being a piece of shit to play against. And what really concerned me was the game against the Florida Panthers, because everybody was talking about it. The Florida Panthers, this is a rivalry now because the Panthers kicked out the Leafs in just 5 games last year, embarrassed them, and in that process ran the Leafs show because you saw late hits from Radko Gudas, and Gudas obviously screaming in the face of Joseph Woll after the game winner in overtime to kick the Leafs out. It was a bit of a fiery series, but a lot of that fire was on the Florida Panthers side. So this year, it was a topic of conversation. The players were asked straight up in the interview, do you have any feelings towards the Florida Panthers? Do you have any feelings towards this game, your first game against them since they eliminated you? And the players gave their cliche answers that no, it's just another game, but they sure played that way, which I was hoping it would be a different story, because when the Leafs went down in the game, I know they are a skilled team and they are capable of just focusing on their game and coming back, and we did see that the next game against Tampa Bay. But when you're in that situation, that is where I really want this team to be showing a difference, where after the whistle, get in scrums, do things that are borderline, and you will get away with them, especially in a game where the referees know this has a little animosity to it. Let the boys play and settle some things on the ice. After the whistle, I didn't see anything. I didn't see any of the big boys engaging in any physical contact. I didn't see Ryan Reeves get in a fight, but again, it's not necessarily the fights, it's just being a piece of shit to play against. I want these guys to have that new mentality of, if you're going to beat us, we're going to go down fighting. We're going to piss you off. We're going to try to play on that line. And it is the teams that play on that line and cross that line that get away with the most and get penalized the least, because the refs know they can't call it all. They just can't. So when the Boston Bruins play, when the Florida Panthers play, when those teams that got that culture of being, again, pieces of shit to play against, they get away with so much because they're just, they do it all the time. And I want the Leafs to start getting in that. And again, that's not just Ryan Reeves. I want to see it from Max Domi. I want to see it from Tyler Bertuzzi. I want to see it from Jake McCabe. And we see it from Mark Giordano when he's stepping up from the teammates. And we want to see it from John Tavares, even, our captain, because he's going to lead the way in this. But again, it was a game against the Florida Panthers where the Leafs just went down quietly and submissed. And that's not what I like to see. And I do think, again, this might be a coaching issue where we've got the tools to be the kind of team that everybody thinks that they can be, with that gritness, with that toughness, and they're being told not to engage. So I hope that's not the case. I know it's only 5 games in, but in this small sample size, I do see a concern there, and I hope it changes quick. Second point here, a lot of people are talking about two of the biggest acquisitions, if not the two biggest acquisitions that the Leafs had this offseason in Tyler Bertuzzi and Max Domi, because so far in a 5-game sample size, we haven't seen the best out of either of them. And yes, I'm making this video coming off of a great game for Max Domi where he had 2 primary assists, setting up Matthew Knies on the 2 goals to help make the team come back and push overtime and end up winning 4-3 against Tampa. But again, through 5 games, the sample size, again, is small, but Tyler Bertuzzi and Max Domi have so much more to offer. Where do I think that we should be playing them? Well, I think that there's a little bit of a difference between the two players. Tyler Bertuzzi put up over 30 goals in Detroit, where he was pretty much the guy in Detroit other than Dylan Larkin. They were on the first line together, and they dominated because Detroit was a bit of a weaker team, and they relied heavily on those 2 players. And I see Bertuzzi as a player that excels with the puck. He's not a guy that wants a quick touch and get it off his stick quickly. He's a guy that wants possession and can control the play, control the breakout, and create his own opportunities. And when he's playing with Matthews and Marner, so far what I've seen is that obviously Matthews and Marner are going to control the puck 90% of the time, especially in the offensive zone. And I do see the fit there because Bertuzzi likes to go to the front of the net and get those greasy kind of goals with rebounds and deflections and screens. But it's not happening so far with those 2 players. I think he's got to be on his own line, controlling the play, because with Matthews and Marner, whenever he gets the puck, I feel like he feels the need to just give it right back to them, which whoever's in that position should be doing. You want Matthews and Marner with the puck in the offensive zone. I just don't think that gets the best out of Bertuzzi. I'd like to see Bertuzzi either on the second line with Tavares and Nylander, where you have somewhat of the same kind of situation, but a little bit less than the first line, or even on the third line where he can control his own line. And it's not like he'd be playing with anybody that can't produce offensively. Calle Jarnkrok is there as well, and we've seen that he is capable of putting the puck in the net as well. But again, that's putting Bertuzzi in a situation where he's the guy and he can control the line. And he's shown in the past with Detroit that that's kind of his game. And Max Domi, on the other hand, he's a guy that does want to get the puck off his stick quickly. He's a playmaker. He wants to be able to produce for other players, whereas I think Bertuzzi sees himself as more of a finisher. So Domi, I'd like to see just for a little short stint on the first line with Matthews and Marner. What we've seen in the past with Max Domi is that he excels with top players, with stars. And last year when he started the season on Chicago, he was playing phenomenally with Patrick Kane because he and Kane, he just knew how to set him up. They did really well together, and I think that's a very similar situation with Matthews and Marner. I think Domi's the kind of guy that when he gets the puck, he's immediately looking for where are my teammates? Where can I set them up? If they're going to the net, can I feed them the puck there? And again, we saw that last game with 2 primary assists from Matthew Knies, where Domi made the smart play, but immediately was thinking pass, and he was able to get the puck to the guy that got the puck in the net. And I think that that's exactly where he fits with Matthews and Marner. The concern, obviously, is that Max Domi is not the best defensively. So if you're putting him on the first line, he's going to be against the other team's best players. And maybe that's a bit of a liability. But when you've got Matthews and Marner on your line, I'm pretty sure you're going to be playing in the offensive zone more times than not. So it actually minimizes the amount of time that Domi would be placed on the defensive end, not to mention that Matthews and Marner are 2 of our better defensive forwards on this team. So I'm not saying a long-term solution, but I would definitely like to see what it would look like with Domi with Matthews and Marner. Maybe you put Knies with Nylander and Tavares, and then all of a sudden you're slotting Bertuzzi on the third line with Pontus Holmberg or David Kampf and Calle Jarnkrok, and I just like the way that sets up, at least for a short stint, just to see how it goes. Number 3 is goaltending. So far in 5 games, it is a bit of a concern. I've talked about it at length that I don't think our goaltending is a concern, and Samsonov has been bad. And there's been a few times that it hasn't been his fault, but you definitely want him making more saves than he is, because that's his job. Even with defensive breakdowns, which this team has had a ton of, your job is to stop the puck and be that last line of defense. And so far, he hasn't made the clutch save to keep us in games. He started off the season with 2 back-to-back wins where the Leafs were able to produce a lot of goals offensively. So he had a lot of goal support, and when the goal support isn't there, Samsonov has not been able to keep us in the game so far. Whereas our backup, Joseph Woll, has done just that, because as we saw against Tampa Bay, the Leafs were down 3-1 early in that game, and Joseph Woll came in and really stepped up, essentially got a shutout, didn't let in any goals, and was one of the two big reasons why the Leafs were able to come back and win that game. So goaltending's still not a concern for me. I know Joseph Woll is capable of starting games when we want him to and need him to, and I think he should get the next little bit of a stretch here so that Samsonov can think about what he's done a little bit and ride the hot hand with Joseph Woll. But I do think Samsonov is going to turn around and play a little bit better. I think he's going to progress to the mean. He's not as bad of a goalie as we've seen so far this year. We saw in a bigger stretch last season that he is capable of being a starting goaltender. So when Samsonov starts to play to his capability, plus Joseph Woll being there as insurance, I still don't have any concerns there. But again, it's something that we really need these guys stepping up because the Leafs are only 3-2. They can't afford to be hovering around 500 for too much longer with the East and the Atlantic Division as good as it is. They need to be able to start separating themselves from the pack a little bit, and goaltending is going to be a big part of that. And lastly, of course, I just need to give a quick shout out to who I think is playing terrific to start the season. And obviously, Austin Matthews, I haven't made a video since he had back-to-back hat tricks to start the season. Still only 6 goals and 0 points through 5 games. Hasn't had any points after those back-to-back hat tricks, but he has been all over it. He's been looking dangerous. The puck hasn't been going in for the last 3 games, but he's still very, very engaged, which I love to see because even if he's not producing, you need to have him present. You need to have him at least producing offensive opportunities so that the team can feed off of it and help with the offensive production. So that's been awesome to see. But William Nylander is playing on another level right now. I think he's been the Leafs' best player, even with Matthews having 6 goals in 2 games. William Nylander has been the star this season. He has points in every one of the games. So has John Tavares. So big shout out to John Tavares. But Nylander's the one on that line that's really controlling the play. Looks really confident. Looks like he's got a purpose. And obviously everybody knows he is in a contract year. He's looking to get paid. If he wasn't looking to get paid, he'd already be signed to stay as a Toronto Maple Leaf. He's looking to get his money. And at this rate, I don't know if that's going to be with Toronto this year because he's just producing at a rate that he's going to be able to command $10 or $11 million. And the Leafs aren't going to be able to afford it. So if he keeps this up, are the Leafs in a position where they can maybe sell high on this guy? I don't like bringing it up, especially this early in the season. But man, the guy has looked terrific. And if he's looking to make bank as much as he can, it's putting the Leafs in a tough spot. But in the meantime, at the beginning of the year, we're going to just enjoy this because he's controlling the play. Again, he's looking confident. He's carrying the puck. He's shooting the puck. He's passing the puck. He's making plays. He looks motivated. He looks like a man on a mission. And I hope it keeps up because we've seen Matthews and Marner have really declined in their production over the last 3 games, but Nylander and Tavares are the ones that are keeping us afloat and scoring the goals. So hopefully he can keep it up, but he's looking on fire. So we're only through 5 games. We've got a couple more this week. I think the Washington Capitals are next on Tuesday at 6 p.m. So not the best opponent. I'm hoping that the Leafs can really shell them and show that they are as good of a team as we think they are. And again, help start separating themselves from the rest of the pack because the Atlantic Division is just so incredible. But what are your thoughts through 5 games this season? Any players that you think it's important to mention? Of course, everybody's kind of gone through a stretch of being the storyline on this team. I didn't even talk about, the Fraser Minten and Pontus Holmberg situation. But what are your thoughts early on in this season, 5 games in, and what are your thoughts for this team for the next 5 games, and what are you looking to see? So let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.